life really does begin at 40. That's not just a platitude or a comforting phrase to help us endure the feeling of time slipping through our fingers. It's a concept that Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, deeply believed in. But let's not start this story at 40. Let's rewind to the beginning, to the moment we're born, when life seems infinite, full of potential, and the self a blank slate. What if I told you that everything you've ever done, every triumph, every heartbreak, every failure, and every fleeting moment of joy is leading you towards something far greater than you could have ever anticipated? Something that Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. Now imagine this: you're standing in a room, staring into a mirror, but instead of your reflection, you see fragments, shards of glass scattered across the floor. Each shard contains a piece of you, the child who laughed without worrying about tomorrow, the teenager who felt misunderstood, the adult who wears a mask to fit in. Jung believed that for most of us, these fragments are all we know. We're disconnected, incomplete, lost in the roles we play, the expectations we carry, and the fears we hide. But what if, at 40, life hands you the glue? What if it offers you the chance to pick up those shards and piece them together, not to recreate who you were, but to discover who you truly are? Click subscribe to this channel to get more insights into human psychology. So let's set the stage. You're 39, standing on the precipice of change, though you may not realize it yet. Maybe you feel stuck in your career. Maybe your relationships feel hollow, or you're haunted by the sense that time is running out. The world tells you to keep going, to push harder, to chase success, to keep up appearances. But Jung's voice cuts through the noise. We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning, for what was great in the morning will be little in the evening, and what in the morning was true will in the evening have become a lie. The first 40 years of life, Jung argued, are about building the ego, the part of you that says I am. It's about constructing an identity, your job, your achievements, your role in society. It's necessary work, but it's not the whole story. At 40, a subtle shift begins. The goals that once drove you start to lose their luster. The person you've been striving to become no longer feels like enough. This is the beginning of what Jung called the midlife crisis, though he didn't see it as a crisis in the way we often do. To Jung, it was an opportunity, a call to awaken to the deeper, truer self that has been waiting in the wings all along. Let me pause here and ask you a question. Have you ever felt like there's a part of you that you've ignored for too long? A voice that whispers in the quiet moments asking, is this really it? Is this all there is? That voice is your shadow, the parts of yourself you've repressed, denied, or disowned because they didn't fit into the image of who you thought you needed to be. The shadow isn't evil, it's simply unseen. And at midlife, it starts knocking louder. Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Think about that for a moment. Enlightenment isn't about escaping your flaws or your pain. It's about facing them. It's about turning toward the shadow and saying, I see you. I'm ready to get to know you. This is the work of the second half of life, not building the ego, but transcending it. Not climbing higher, but digging deeper. Imagine a man who spent his entire life climbing a ladder, only to realize at 40 that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. That's the moment we're talking about. And the beauty of it is that it's never too late to climb down and start again. Jung believed that at 40, the psyche begins to shift its focus from external achievement to internal fulfillment. It's no longer about what you can get from the world, but about what you can give to it. It's no longer about proving yourself, but about knowing yourself. Here's a practical experiment you can try. Take a piece of paper and draw a circle. Inside the circle, write down everything that defines you: your job, your relationships, your achievements, your possessions. Now look at the circle. Is there anything outside of it? Anything you've left out? Anything that feels like it belongs to you but doesn't fit into the life you've built? That's your starting point. That's where the work begins. And this work isn't just theoretical. Jung's concept of individuation has real, tangible effects on our lives. Studies in psychology have shown that people who embrace their shadow, who confront their fears, acknowledge their flaws, and integrate the parts of themselves they've denied, experience greater psychological well-being. They're less likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. They're more creative, more resilient, more alive. Think about that. By facing the parts of yourself you've been running from, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. But it's not easy. Jung compared the process of individuation to the alchemical transformation of lead into gold. It's messy, it's painful, and it requires immense courage. You'll have to let go of the person you thought you were to make room for the person you're meant to become. But in the end, it's worth it. Because this is what it means to be whole. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Jung himself went through it. After a personal and professional break with Sigmund Freud, Jung fell into a deep depression. He began to experience vivid dreams and visions, which he documented in what would later become known as the Red Book. Through this process, he confronted his own shadow, his fears, his doubts, and emerged transformed. He didn't just theorize about individuation, he lived it. So here we are, standing at the threshold of transformation. You've just taken the first step by acknowledging the deeper questions, the shadow, the fragments of yourself that have been left behind. But what's next? How do you begin to move toward wholeness? For Jung, this wasn't a theoretical exercise, it was a lived experience. And if we're going to walk this path together, we need to understand not only the psychological terrain, but also the practical steps we can take to navigate it. Let's start with a question Jung often posed: what is it in your life that pulls you forward? He wasn't asking about your goals or ambitions, but something deeper, something less tangible. Jung believed that each of us carries within us a blueprint for who we are meant to become. He called it the self, the totality of our being, both conscious and unconscious. The self is like a compass, always pointing toward wholeness, even when we're lost in the fog of ego and shadow. But here's the catch: the self communicates with us in symbols, dreams, and intuitions, not in words. And if we're not paying attention, we'll miss the message. So let's talk about dreams. Jung believed that dreams are the psyche's way of communicating with us, of guiding us toward the truths we need to face. Have you ever had a dream that lingered with you? A dream that felt significant even if you couldn't quite explain why? That's the language of the unconscious. Jung once said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." It's through this door that we gain access to the parts of ourselves that we've forgotten or ignored. Here's an experiment for you tonight. Before you go to sleep, set an intention to remember your dreams. Keep a notebook by your bed, and the moment you wake up, write down whatever you can recall, no matter how fragmented or nonsensical it seems. Then ask yourself, what emotions did I feel in the dream? What symbols stood out to me? What might this dream be trying to tell me about my life right now? Over time, you'll start to notice patterns, recurring themes, and insights that can help guide you on your journey. But dreams are just one piece of the puzzle. To truly engage with the process of individuation, we need to confront what Jung called the archetypes, the universal symbols and patterns that shape our inner and outer worlds. Think of the archetypes as the actors in the drama of your psyche. There's the hero who seeks to overcome challenges and achieve greatness. There's the shadow who embodies the parts of yourself you'd rather not see. There's the anima or animus, the feminine or masculine aspects of your psyche that you've yet to integrate. And then there's the wise old man or woman, the inner guide who offers wisdom and insight. One of the most powerful ways to engage with the archetypes is through active imagination, a technique Jung developed to bridge the gap between the conscious and unconscious mind. Here's how it works. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and focus on a symbol, image, or emotion that feels significant to you. Allow your mind to wander and observe what unfolds. You might find yourself having a conversation with your shadow, or walking through a landscape that feels both familiar and strange. Whatever happens, don't judge or analyze it at the moment. Just experience it. Later, you can reflect on what it might mean. Now, let's talk about the practical side of this journey. Because while dreams and archetypes are powerful tools, they're not enough on their own. To truly transform, you need to bring what you've discovered in the inner world into the outer world. This is where many people get stuck. They have a profound insight or realization, but they don't know how to translate it into action. Jung called this the reality principle, the idea that psychological growth must be grounded in the realities of everyday life. Here's a practical exercise to help with this. Think about a situation in your life where you feel stuck. Maybe it's a relationship, a job, or a pattern of behavior. Ask yourself, what would wholeness look like in this situation? What would it mean to approach it not from a place of fear or ego, but from a place of integration and authenticity? Then take one small step toward that vision. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be as simple as having an honest conversation, setting a boundary, or trying something new. The key is to act, to bring the inner work into the outer world. Jung believed that this process of integration is what gives life its meaning. He once said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." In other words, we can't bypass the hard stuff. We can't skip over the pain, the fear, the uncertainty. But we can transform it. We can use it as fuel for growth. And in doing so, we become more than we were. We become whole. But let's not romanticize this journey. It's not easy. There will be moments of doubt, moments when you want to turn back. There will be times when the shadow feels too heavy, when the path feels too steep. This is what Jung called the night sea journey, the descent into the depths of the psyche. It's a lonely and terrifying place, but it's also where the treasure lies. Because it's only by going into the darkness that we can find the light. And here's where the magic happens. As you begin to integrate the shadow, as you confront your fears and embrace your wholeness, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You start to see the world differently. You start to see yourself differently. The roles you used to play, the masks you used to wear begin to fall away. And in their place, you find something far more authentic, far more powerful, your true self. Jung described this process as a kind of rebirth. He once wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. At 40, you begin to recognize those disguises for what they are. You begin to see through them, to the essence of who you are and who you're meant to become." This is why life truly begins at 40. Not because the first half of life doesn't matter, but because it's the foundation for everything that comes next. At 40, you're not starting over, you're starting deeper. You're taking everything you've learned, everything you've experienced, and using it to create something new, something whole, something real. So now we've reached the heart of the journey. You've stood at the edge of the mirror, glimpsed the fragments of yourself, and begun to pick up the pieces. You've met your shadow, listened to your dreams, and tapped into the archetypes that shape your inner world. But there's an even deeper question to ask now, one that Jung would have posed to all of us: what does it mean to live a meaningful life? Jung believed that meaning is not something we find, it's something we create. And the process of creating meaning doesn't happen by accident. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the truth of who we are. Life at 40 and beyond is not about chasing external markers of success, but about aligning with an internal sense of purpose. It's about answering the call of the self. And to do that, we have to ask some hard questions. What do you truly value? What are you willing to let go of? And what are you willing to fight for? Let's start with values. Jung believed that the psyche is inherently teleological. It's always striving toward a goal, even if we're not consciously aware of it. But if we don't take the time to examine our values, we risk being driven by unconscious desires, by the ego's need for validation, or the shadow's unacknowledged fears. So here's an experiment. Take a moment to write down your top 5 values. These could be things like love, creativity, integrity, freedom, or connection. Now ask yourself, are these values reflected in the way you live your life? If not, what's standing in the way? This exercise can be uncomfortable, but it's also incredibly powerful. Because once you've identified your values, you can begin to align your actions with them. And that's where meaning begins. But meaning isn't just about what we do, it's also about how we relate to others. Jung believed that relationships are one of the most important arenas for psychological growth. He said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Think about the people in your life, the ones who challenge you, inspire you, frustrate you, or hurt you. Each of these relationships is an opportunity to learn something about yourself. Maybe a conflict with a partner reveals an unacknowledged fear of intimacy. Maybe a friend's success triggers feelings of inadequacy. Maybe a mentor's wisdom awakens a desire for growth. These moments, as painful or joyful as they may be, are where the real work happens. Here's a practical exercise for this. Choose one relationship in your life that feels particularly charged, whether positively or negatively. Reflect on the dynamics of that relationship. What does it bring out in you? What does it ask of you? And what might it be teaching you about yourself? This isn't about blaming the other person or fixing the relationship. It's about understanding the role it plays in your journey toward wholeness. Now, let's talk about fear. Because if there's one thing that holds us back from living a meaningful life, it's fear. Fear of failure. Fear of rejection. Fear of change. Jung believed that fear is often a sign that we're on the right path. He said, the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Think about that for a moment. What if the things you fear the most aren't obstacles to overcome, but invitations to grow? What if they're pointing you toward the very thing you need to face in order to become whole? Here's an experiment to try. Take a moment to write down your biggest fear. Then ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen if this fear came true? And what's the best thing that could happen if I faced it anyway? This exercise can help you reframe your relationship with fear, not as something to avoid, but as something to explore. Because on the other side of fear lies freedom. But meaning isn't just about values, relationships, or fear. It's also about creativity. Jung believed that creativity is one of the most profound expressions of the self. He said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." Think about that. Creativity isn't just about art or music or writing. It's about how you approach life. It's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, finding new solutions to old problems, and expressing yourself in ways that feel authentic and alive. Here's a practical way to tap into your creativity. Set aside 20 minutes each day to do something creative, without any goal or expectation. This could be drawing, journaling, dancing, cooking, or even building something with your hands. The point isn't to create something perfect, it's to connect with the part of yourself that thrives on play and exploration. Over time, this practice can help you discover new aspects of yourself and open up new possibilities for growth. As we near the end of this journey, let's return to the idea of wholeness. Jung believed that wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about integration. It's about embracing all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the conscious and the unconscious, the past and the present. It's about recognizing that you are not a collection of fragments, but a complete and complex being, and at 40 you're finally ready to see that. Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." This is the essence of life at 40, the realization that you are not defined by your past, your failures, or your fears. You are defined by the choices you make in this moment and in every moment that follows. You are defined by your willingness to face the truth of who you are and to step into the fullness of your being. So as we close this journey, let me leave you with one final question. What would it look like to live a life that feels whole? Not a life that looks successful from the outside, but a life that feels meaningful, authentic, and alive from the inside. Take a moment to imagine it, feel it, and then, when you're ready, take the first step toward it. Because life really does begin at 40, and this is just the beginning.